They cut me off to protect my brother. But when everything collapsed, they came crawling back. My dad looked me dead in the eye and said, "It's just a small thing. Don't overreact." He was talking about a party. A casual family get-together, he called it. But it wasn't casual. And it definitely wasn't small. It was a welcome home celebration for my brother, complete with decorations, catering, and 20 people on the guest list. Everyone was invited, except me. No text, no heads up, no explanation. Just silence, until I found out from my cousin's Instagram story. The caption read, "He's back. Family's all here." Only, I wasn't. That photo hit me like a punch to the ribs. Smiling faces. My parents. My aunts. Even neighbors I hadn't seen in years. And in the middle of it all, my brother, back from his 6-month life reset in Europe, grinning like a hero returning from war. I stared at the screen for a long time. Then I called my dad. He answered like nothing was wrong. "Oh hey kiddo. What's up?" I kept my voice calm. "I just saw the photos. Why didn't you tell me about the party?" He hesitated. Just for a second. Then said the line I'll never forget. "It's just a reunion. You're making it a big deal." No apology. No shame. Just dismissal. That's when it hit me. This wasn't an accident. It wasn't a scheduling mix-up. It was a choice. They didn't forget to invite me. They decided I didn't belong there. And the reason? It wasn't about me being difficult. Or unavailable. Or even distant. It was because I made the mistake of not playing along last year. When my brother screwed over a family friend in a shady business deal, I was the only one who spoke up. I told the truth. And in return, they froze me out. Slowly at first, canceled dinners, missed calls, oops moments. Then blatantly. Like now. I sat in my apartment that night, staring at that photo. It wasn't just the exclusion. It was the message behind it. He's back. And we picked a side. It's not yours. So I did something impulsive. I booked a ski trip. I'd never skied before. Didn't even know how. But I needed to get as far away from that city, that family, that betrayal as possible. I packed my bag in silence. No goodbye texts. No passive-aggressive posts. Just gone. 3 days later, I was on top of a freezing mountain, halfway through learning how to not break my legs, when my phone started blowing up. 22 missed calls. 14 texts. One from my mom in all caps. "You need to come back. Now." I stared at the screen. And smiled. Because now, they wanted me there? Too late. They made their choice. And I was just getting started. When I didn't answer my mom's message, she called again. Then again. By the 6th call, I put my phone on airplane mode and went back to trying not to die on a beginner slope. The snow was cold. The air was sharp. But none of it hurt as much as what my family did. Still, I wasn't ready for what came next. That night, I turned my phone back on. It exploded. Voicemails. Missed calls. A barrage of texts, all frantic. But the weirdest part? They weren't just from my parents. Cousins. Neighbors. Even my dad's coworker. All telling me the same thing. "Please come home. Your brother needs you. This isn't the time for pride." Pride? They threw a whole celebration without me. Now they wanted me back because something went wrong? No one said what happened. Not in the texts, not in the voicemails. Just vague panic. So I did what I always do when things stop making sense. I called my aunt. She picked up immediately. No small talk. Just this sharp inhale like she was holding something in for too long. "I wasn't supposed to say anything," she whispered. I said nothing. She continued. "There was a situation at the party. After you saw the photos." I listened. "Your brother made a toast," she said. "He was drunk. He started bragging." I knew that tone. Knew that look. The same arrogant energy he had as a teenager when he lied about getting a scholarship he never applied for. He said, he was the reason your parents still had a roof over their heads. That you were dead weight. That cutting you out was the best decision they'd made. She paused. "And he said it all with your mom and dad sitting right there." Smiling. There it was. The full picture. Not just exclusion. Erasure. I wasn't just left out of the party. I was replaced publicly. The golden child had returned, and the one who asked too many questions? Gone. My aunt's voice trembled. But that's not the worst part, she said. I waited. He used your name. Bragged that he used money you loaned him years ago to fund his business trip. Said you were too soft to ever ask for it back. My jaw clenched. That was my money. I'd wired it without hesitation when he said he needed help. He said it was urgent. Private. Embarrassing. Now he was using it to boost his ego? I felt something shift in me. Something final. And then came the real twist. There's an investigation, she whispered. About that startup he pitched. Someone reported it as fraudulent. And your name is all over the paperwork. That stopped me cold. What? She sounded terrified. Your signature. Your transfer. He linked it to you. And now they want to talk to you. My head was spinning. They didn't just betray me. They used me. And now they wanted me back, not because they missed me. Because they needed a shield. A scapegoat. A cleanup crew. I hung up without saying goodbye, then stared out the window of my hotel room, watching the snow fall like ash. My phone buzzed again. This time, it was my dad. Just 3 words. Come home. Now. No apology. No explanation. Just expectation. I stared at the screen. And for the first time in my life, I felt nothing. Not fear. Not sadness. Not even anger. Just clarity. They'd burned the bridge. And now they were standing on the other side, begging me to rebuild it. 3 hours after that last text from my dad, someone knocked on my hotel room door. I didn't answer. But they didn't leave. Another knock. Firmer. So I checked the peephole. It wasn't my family. It was a man in a gray coat, holding a folder. He wasn't law enforcement. Not yet. He was from a compliance firm, hired by an investor who had put money into my brother's company. The same fake startup I had nothing to do with, except one detail. My name was on the founding documents. I opened the door. The man didn't even sit. Just stood there, flipping open the folder like this was a routine check. He spoke calmly. Your signature is on the transfer. The account was in your name. Funds were routed through a joint structure. I froze. I never opened a joint structure. He nodded, like he'd expected that. Looks like someone else did. Using your details. He flipped another page. Driver's license copy. Utility bill. Digital signature. All fake. All believable enough to pass. I felt sick. He put everything in your name, the man said. Tax ID, compliance forms, even some vendor contracts. And just like that, I understood why my brother smiled so confidently in those party photos. He wasn't just playing the golden boy. He was building a firewall. Made of me. I asked the man what would happen next. He shrugged. If it's proven you were unaware, you won't be charged. But they'll want statements. Records. Full cooperation. I nodded, jaw clenched. He gave me a card and left. No threats. No warnings. Just the quiet pressure of a life about to cave in. I didn't sleep that night. I sat in that hotel room, lights off, phone buzzing every hour. Dad. Mom. My brother. Even my uncle called, a man who hadn't spoken to me in 5 years. The voicemails were a mix of fake calm and real panic. You're overreacting. We can fix this as a family. Don't be dramatic. You'll ruin his future if you talk to the wrong people. That one stuck with me. You'll ruin his future. Not a single word about mine. Not a single question about how I was doing. Then came the kicker. A message from my brother. Just 4 words. Don't make this worse. I stared at that for a long time. The arrogance. The entitlement. Like I was the threat. Like he was the victim. And suddenly, every moment of my life where I'd been told to be the bigger person snapped into place. The Christmas he crashed my car and blamed it on a stranger. The birthday he forgot because he was too stressed. The countless times I covered for him emotionally, financially, publicly. And now? Now I was his get-out-of-jail-free card. I didn't reply. Instead, I pulled out my laptop. I opened every old email. Every message. Every wire transfer receipt I'd kept out of habit. And I started building a timeline. Not for revenge. For protection. Because if they were going to throw me under the bus, I was going to make sure the bus stopped for a full investigation. By morning, I had one thought. They didn't just cut me out. They tried to bury me. And I was done staying quiet. The first voice I heard the next morning wasn't from a lawyer. It was my mother's. She showed up at my hotel. Not with breakfast. Not with concern. But with a mission. She didn't knock. The front desk called me. Said there was a woman downstairs insisting she was my emergency contact. I told them to send her away. They didn't. She made it up to my floor anyway. I don't know how. Maybe she begged. Maybe she lied. She always had a way of getting where she wasn't supposed to be. When I opened the door, she looked relieved. Fake relieved. Her makeup was flawless. Her tone was soft. Practiced. I just want to talk. I let her in. Because I needed to hear what they were going to try next. She sat down like she was in my living room back home. Crossed her legs. Smiled like nothing was burning. I know this looks bad, she said. But families go through things. And we don't fix them by running away. I didn't respond. She took that as permission to continue. Your brother made mistakes. But he's trying. He's under so much pressure and... I cut her off. He committed fraud. In my name. Her face didn't change. That's not proven. It will be. She hesitated. Then shifted to her favorite weapon. Guilt. You think this is easy for me? Watching my boys fight? Watching one of you walk away from the other. I stared. I didn't walk away. I was erased. Then framed. That hit her for half a second. Then came the line I'd been waiting for. He's still your brother. There it was. The phrase they always came back to. As if biology was a contract. As if being related meant I owed him my silence. My protection. My freedom. She leaned forward, hands folded like we were at Sunday church. Whatever he did, he regrets it. I laughed. He doesn't regret what he did. He regrets getting caught. Silence. Then she dropped the mask. You're going to blow up this family. Do you understand that? I nodded. I didn't blow it up. I'm just the one refusing to pretend it's still standing. She stood, grabbed her purse, and for the first time snapped. You're being selfish. I smiled. That's what he said when I wouldn't cover his rent. That's what you said when I told the truth. That's what you all say when I stop cleaning up after him. She didn't respond. She just walked to the door. But right before leaving, she turned. He's scared. He needs help. I met her eyes. So did I. No one showed up. Click. She left. But as the door closed, my phone buzzed again. A number I didn't recognize. The message was simple. You don't know me, but I know your brother. And I think it's time you knew what really happened in Paris. Paris. The city he said he went to for business. The same trip I'd wired him $5,000 to cover. I stared at the message. The sender? A woman. No profile picture. Just a name I didn't recognize. And just like that. This wasn't just family drama anymore. It was bigger, darker, and far from over. The message sat on my screen like a loaded weapon. You don't know me, but I know your brother. And I think it's time you knew what really happened in Paris. I didn't respond right away. I stared at the name, Elena G., and scrolled through my memory. Nothing. No face. No voice. But I replied, go ahead. A minute passed. Then 3. Then came the first photo. My brother. In a hotel bar. Arms around 2 women. A thick gold watch on his wrist. Not the cheap one he used to wear. The timestamp? 2 days after he begged me for money. Said he was stuck in Paris after a business deal collapsed and needed help getting home. Back then, I'd wired him $5,000 without question. Now? I saw where that money went. Bottle service. Luxury hotel. A dinner receipt for €420 at a place with gold leaf appetizers. Then she sent a message. He told me he was single. That he was an investor. Said he was helping his shy little brother build a company. I blinked. He used your face, your LinkedIn, your actual resume to pitch deals in your name. Told everyone he was the money and you were the brains. I felt like throwing my phone across the room. But she wasn't done. He ghosted me after 3 weeks. Blocked my number. Left the hotel bill unpaid. Put it on the company card. There was no company card. That was my personal debit. The one I once let him use for supplies and forgot to shut down. He said if anyone came asking, I should say I met you, not him. That you'd take the fall. And then came the twist that froze my blood. He said you owed him. For covering up what happened in Chicago. I stared at the message. Chicago? I had never even been to Chicago. I asked her what he meant. She hesitated. Then sent the final voice note. His voice. Laughing. Saying my name. And if it goes south, don't worry. My brother's too much of a doormat to fight back. Click. Silence. I sat there for what felt like hours. This wasn't just betrayal. This was identity theft. This was premeditated. He'd been planning it for years. Carefully. Patiently. Turning me into a puppet while he built a version of himself using my face, my name, my reputation. And now it was all crumbling. Because of one woman. One mistake. I thanked her. She replied once. You're not the first person he stepped on. But I really hope you're the last. I forwarded everything to the investigator who visited me days earlier. Every message. Every receipt. Every voice note. He replied in under an hour. This changes everything. I leaned back in my chair, heart still pounding. And for the first time, I realized. I wasn't just clearing my name. I was lighting the fuse on his. Because the deeper I dug, the more it became clear. My brother wasn't just reckless. He was dangerous. The first official envelope arrived 2 days later. Plain. White. No return address. But the moment I opened it, I knew. This wasn't family drama anymore. Inside was a formal request for a deposition. The investor who had backed my brother's fake company was pressing forward. The law firm wanted records, statements, access to emails. And they named me, not as a suspect yet, but as a key witness. That word hit hard. Witness. Because deep down I knew. If I didn't speak now, I'd stop being a witness. And start being a shield. But before I could respond to the letter, I got another message. This one wasn't printed. It was a video. Sent to my phone. From him. I hadn't seen his face in nearly a year, not since I watched him grin through champagne toasts while I sat home uninvited. But there he was. Backlit. Calm. Wearing the same smug confidence he always wore when he thought he was untouchable. He leaned into the camera and said, So, you're really gonna play this out? After everything I've done for you? I didn't laugh. Didn't even blink. You think those files make you smart? You think anyone will believe you weren't part of it? Then came the threat. Don't make me drag you down with me. I still have all the messages. All the transfers. If I go down, you go first. That was the twist. He wasn't trying to deny anything. He was trying to weaponize my silence. Because he knew the truth. I had helped him, unintentionally, blindly, but still. I had sent him money. I had co-signed one lease years ago. I had told people to just trust him, he's my brother. And now he was counting on that guilt to keep me frozen. But guilt only works on people who still believe they did something wrong. And I was done believing that. I didn't reply. Instead, I sent the video straight to the law firm. They responded fast. Words like coercion, intimidation, and obstruction were mentioned. But that wasn't the part that got me. It was the final line of their email. You're not the one under fire anymore. He is. That night, I sat on my balcony, watching city lights blink across a skyline that didn't care about family loyalty or shame. My phone buzzed again. This time, my dad. I let it go to voicemail. He sounded tired. Worn. He made mistakes. But he's scared. Don't let outsiders tear this family apart. I stared at the screen. Outsiders. Like the justice system was an enemy. Like truth didn't belong in our house. That's when it hit me. They didn't just want silence. They wanted obedience, the same blind obedience I gave them my whole life. Until now. So I opened my laptop. Typed one sentence. I'm ready to testify. Because if he wanted to drag me down, He'd have to do it from underneath. 3 days after I agreed to testify, my brother vanished. Not literally, he still had his phone on, still posted the occasional story from some overpriced cafe. But his confidence was gone. The stories had no captions. The sunglasses were permanent. And the comments under his posts? Brutal. People were catching on. The investors. The friends he'd lied to. The girl he promised to take to Dubai, who found out he used her passport for a fake identity. The web was collapsing. And I wasn't even pushing. I was just standing still, while he fell apart. I didn't celebrate. Not publicly. Not even to myself. But I did notice something. The more the pressure built, the quieter my family became. No more guilt calls. No, he's still your brother speeches. Just silence. Until one night, my cousin texted me. We hadn't spoken in a year, not since the birthday I wasn't invited to. But the message was short. You should know, he's not sleeping. He's panicking. I stared at that line. Not out of concern, but because it told me one thing. He finally realized I wasn't bluffing. The next morning, I got an email from the law firm. Your statement was received. Additional witnesses have stepped forward. I asked who. They didn't name names. But they attached screenshots. 4 of them. Each one was from a different person. All saying the same thing. He said his brother was the brains. He used family ties to gain trust. He claimed they built it together. Each lie wrapped in just enough truth to sound real. Each story used me as the credibility stamp. But now, those same people were turning on him. Because money was missing. Papers were forged. Trust was gone. Then came the final crack. My phone buzzed with a number I didn't know again. Voicemail. A woman's voice. Shaky. Quiet. She said her name was Michelle. Said she used to work for my brother, unpaid. Promised equity. Lured in with dreams of changing the game. Then she said, I have a recording. He told me you'd never do anything. That he could do whatever he wanted because you were weak. A good little soldier. I didn't feel angry. I felt free. Because that's what this was really about. Not money. Not fraud. Not fake companies. It was about a lifetime of being the one who never fought back. The one who stayed quiet. Cleaned up the mess. Took the fall. And now? Now I was the one holding the match. Michelle sent the audio. It was clear. Unedited. Unmistakable. My brother's voice laughing. Worst case, I say my brother wasn't on it. He'll fold. He always folds. I saved the file. Labeled it. Final nail. Because now it wasn't just a case file. It was a eulogy. For the version of me he thought still existed. The call came in at 6:42 a.m. I wasn't even awake. My phone lit up beside the bed, buzzing with a number I didn't recognize. I let it go to voicemail. Then it rang again. And again. By the 4th call, I answered, more annoyed than curious. The voice on the other end? One of the investigators. Just wanted to inform you directly, he said. Your brother attempted to leave the country this morning. I sat up fast. What? He continued, calm as ever. Airport flagged him. Someone tipped off the authorities about an active investigation. He was headed to Dubai. Of course. The place he used to brag about. The land of clean slates and no questions. He wasn't trying to clear his name. He was trying to disappear. What happens now? I asked. He paused. He's not under arrest. Not yet. But he's been served. I closed my eyes. Served. The legal weight finally landed, like a spotlight cutting through years of shadows. He'd been running on borrowed time. And now the clock ran out. I hung up and just sat there, the early morning light creeping in through the blinds like a slow unraveling. 10 minutes later, another text came through. Not from him. From my dad. You didn't have to take it this far. No hello. No context. Just accusation. I stared at it, fingers hovering over the keyboard. Then another came through. He's still your brother. Of course. They still didn't get it. They didn't understand that all of this, wasn't about revenge. It was about truth. It was about finally stepping out of the role they kept forcing me into. The fixer. The shield. The silent one. So I typed back one line. He tried to ruin me. And you watched. Send. No reply. But an hour later, another call came. This time? From him. I didn't pick up. He left a voicemail. I played it. His voice was strained. Flat. No charm left. No laughter. I don't know what you want. You win, okay? You got your show. You got your little revenge. He coughed. I was gonna cut you in. Eventually. It was never personal. Then silence. Then rage. You think they care about you? You think when this is over, you'll be some kind of hero? You're nothing without me. You never were. I ended the message halfway through. Because I'd heard this speech before. Every time I stood up for myself. Every time I did something he couldn't. Every time I succeeded without needing his name. He always came back to the same thing. You're nothing without me. But now? He was the one trying to flee. I was the one still standing. And his voice, once full of power, sounded like something else now. Desperation. That night, I got one final message. From the law firm. We've officially removed you from all liability. Your testimony helped multiple parties. Thank you. Attached was a digital letter. Signed. Stamped. Clean. And with it? A sentence that hit harder than I expected. Your cooperation has protected others from future harm. Others. Not just me. Not just revenge. But people who were almost trapped. Almost fooled. Almost buried the same way I was. And that's when I realized. This wasn't the end of his story. But it was finally the end of mine. The day after my brother got served and officially blocked from leaving the country, my mom called. Not with panic. Not with rage. But with warmth. The fake kind. The voice she used when she wanted something. Hi, sweetheart, she said, like we hadn't spent the last few months on opposite sides of a collapsing bridge. I didn't say anything. So she kept going. I've been thinking about everything. It's a lot. But your father and I talked, and we think it's time we moved on. Moved on? Like this was a bad dinner argument and not attempted financial ruin. But I let her finish. There's going to be a small dinner next week. Just family. Nothing dramatic. Just a chance to reconnect. There it was. The trap. Disguised as peace. I waited. Then came the follow-up. Your brother will be there too. He wants to apologize. He knows he made mistakes. I could almost hear her smile. But we can't heal unless we're together. I laughed. Quietly. Together, the word they only used when it benefited them. I told her I'd think about it. Hung up. And just sat there. Because part of me, the old me, still wanted to believe that maybe, just maybe, there was something to save. That maybe this dinner would be closure. That maybe my brother would finally take responsibility. That maybe my parents would look me in the eye and say, we were wrong. But then, I got another message. From someone I hadn't heard from in years. My childhood best friend. He and I drifted apart a long time ago. Life happened. Distance. Time. But his message was short. Hey. Weird question. Did your brother ever use your name with anyone in LA? I froze. Replied. Why? He responded. Because I just got a call from a guy claiming you vouched for him. Said you two ran a tech startup together. His name was, yeah. It was him. Even now. Even with everything on fire. My brother was still using my name. Still trying to squeeze one last drop of credibility from the person he tried to ruin. I called my friend. Told him the truth. He swore to shut it down, report it, warn others. But something inside me cracked wide open. This wasn't just a mistake. It wasn't just bad judgment. It wasn't even desperation. It was pattern. Rotten. Rehearsed. Recycled. And the dinner? It wasn't reconciliation. It was optics. A way for them to say, look, we're a family again. While quietly sweeping years of damage under the rug. I didn't respond to the dinner invite. Didn't decline. Didn't engage. But the night of the event? My phone buzzed. A photo. A long table. My parents. My brother. Candles. Wine. Forced smiles. Caption. Family. No matter what. I stared at it. then shut off my phone, because I finally understood. They weren't inviting me back in. They were inviting my silence. And I was never giving it to them again. A week after the family dinner I never attended, I got a letter. Not an email. Not a text. A real, physical letter. Thick envelope. Formal handwriting. Inside? A printed note from my father. We may never agree on how this played out, but you'll always be our son. And your brother, he'll always be your blood. No apology. No ownership. Just the same tired message dressed up in nicer words. Get over it. I folded the letter and placed it back in the envelope without a word, then tossed it in the drawer with the rest of the things I kept only as proof that it all happened. Not because I wanted to remember, but because I wanted to never forget. A few days later, I got a call from the lead investigator. Calm voice. Professional tone. The case is moving forward. Your brother will likely face charges. He's trying to settle. But too many people came forward. I nodded silently, letting it wash over me. The house of cards had collapsed. But I hadn't even touched it. All I'd done was stop holding it up. No revenge. No threats. No screaming. Just truth. And truth, as it turns out, is louder than betrayal. Then came the final twist. I got a message request on social media. Another woman. Different name. Same story. He told me you were his co-founder. That you handled the books. I didn't even open the full message. Because I knew how it ended. The same way it always did. With me cleaning up. With him disappearing. With my family blaming me for the explosion he lit himself. But not anymore. That same night, I booked a flight. One way. No forwarding address. Not to run. To reset. To step out of the shadows they built around me. To stop playing the role of the reliable one, the fixer, the fallback, the easy target. And on the morning of that flight, as I zipped my last bag shut, I looked at my phone. No new calls. No new messages. Just peace. And that silence? It wasn't lonely. It was earned. Because I finally understood something they never did. You don't have to burn the bridge. You just have to stop walking back across it. And as that plane took off, climbing above the noise and the lies and the weight of everything they tried to put on my shoulders, I looked out the window and smiled. Because for the first time in my life, I wasn't running from anything. I was finally walking toward myself.